In the dark of the forest, as the heavy rain poured relentlessly, the image of a lifeless schoolgirl appeared, her chest no longer rising, her face pale. Alongside the haunting vision came the sorrowful voice of a father. "My daughter, I'm sorry." His eyes brimmed with deep regret and sorrow. "I killed you." Mincy collapsed in the rain, his body trembling, and above his head glowed the number 1. Tears streamed down his cheeks again and again, not just once but 99 times. He cried not out of weakness but from the unbearable weight of guilt for failing to protect his daughter. But even grief has limits. Eventually, Masak rose to his feet, wiped away his tears. There was still one last chance. The number 1 remained, glowing steadily above his head. Clenching his teeth, he muttered with unwavering resolve, "Trust me, Dami. This time I won't fail you." Rue went to a few days earlier. Mincy jolted upright in bed, confused, his eyes fixed blankly ahead. The television in front of him buzzed with breaking news: a zombie outbreak. Chaos had erupted outside the city. Zombies were everywhere. Civilization was crumbling in the blink of an eye. From the hallway, Dami stepped into the room and asked casually, "Dad, what are you watching?" She was perfectly fine, no wounds, no fear in her eyes, just normal. The moment Minsaw saw her, his heart clenched and a fierce determination ignited within him. "We're going to survive this no matter what." He remembered the scene too vividly. Dami dying in his arms. "Dami, wake up, please don't leave me alone." But for an ordinary middle-aged man and a young girl, survival in a world overrun by monsters was hell itself. And so, after her death, Mincio ended his life by hanging himself. But just as everything faded to black, the rope snapped. Suddenly he found himself somewhere else, A's strange world. Standing before him was a radiant, divine being, smiling like an angel. "You've been given one more chance," the being said. Mio's eyes widened in disbelief. Was this real? When he awoke again, he was in his familiar room, alive, whole. And above his head, glowing clearly, was the number 99. He gasped and sat up, startled. "I'm okay. What the hell is going on?" Looking to his side, he froze. There, reflected in the mirror, was himself, and above his head, what is this number? Without hesitation, he rushed to a nearby room and began pounding on the door. His voice trembled with urgency. "Dami, Ryudami, open the door! Hurry!" Finally, she opened it, groggy and annoyed. "Seriously? It's the middle of the night. What's your problem?" Moog grabbed her shoulders tightly. "Dami, you're okay, right? You're alive, right? You're still here, aren't you?" She blinked at him, confused. "What? Did you have a nightmare or something?" Without warning, he reached out and clutched her wrist tightly. Moments later, both were fully dressed in a quip. They stepped outside into the night. Dad, why do you keep acting like this?" Dami complained. "No more talking, just follow me," Mick replied firmly. She kept whining, tugging at his arm. "Dad, I'm tired, let go of me already." But he didn't explain. He simply answered coldly, "There's no time." Then Min-suk suddenly shouted, "If we don't move now, we'll die." At that exact moment, a zombie lunged at him with its mouth wide open. In an instant, everything rewound. Time reset. Mick was back at the beginning. The number above his head had dropped to 98. His eyes widened with shock. "I'm back." He stared at himself in the mirror, stunned. The number had decreased. That's when a chilling realization hit him. He sat motionless on the bed. He finally understood that number was the count of his remaining lives. His hand clenched the blanket tightly. In other words, it wasn't just a number, it was a counter, and he had 98 chances left. The scene shifted. A zombie skull was smashed in with a bat. This was the 98th attempt. Again, Min-suk took Dami outside to fight the infected. He did everything he could to save her, or on the 71st attempt, even if it meant doing things that went against his morals. He was willing to do anything for his daughter. But Dami still ended up surrounded, torn apart by the horde. They were separated and both became food for the undead. Still, Min-suk refused to give up. Clutching a knife, he stabbed and slashed with everything he had. At that point, the number above his head showed only 50 chances remaining. Then another scene. One of the zombies had its teeth knocked out by Min-yuk. Now he had just 13 tries left, but he never stopped fighting. With a cold, expressionless face, Minsuk struck down zombie after zombie. He raised his weapon high and with a clean swing cut one of the infected down. Looking back, the ones behind him had already been handled. But his face remained blank, indifferent. Even with hundreds or thousands of chances, none of it mattered, because the one person he was trying to save was already lost. Damie had been infected. She was no longer the same. Soulless eyes, vacant expression, she staggered toward him. Minsuk looked at her, trembling. She whispered faintly, "Dad, help me." Her mouth opened wide, about to bite into his shoulder. But suddenly, Ming turned and embraced her tightly. A weak father like him could do nothing but watch his daughter die again. And then, he raised the gun to his head and pulled the trigger. Instantly, he was back at the beginning again. Tears were still clinging to his eyelashes. As he opened his eyes, they spilled down his cheeks. The room was familiar yet hollow. His eyes were empty. Then Minsuk sat up sharply, staring ahead. Inside the other room, Damie stirred from her sleep, rubbing her eyes groggy. She opened the door, still drowsy. "What's going on, Dad? It's late. Why all the noise?" Right in front of her, Minyo stood fully dressed, gripping a knife tightly in his hand. The sight of him froze her in place. Her eyes widened in shock, and on Minyo's face was a look of absolute terror. "Dad." His hand slowly reached out toward her. Then he pulled her into a tight embrace. He held her for a long moment, then slowly released her. Leaning close to her ear, he whispered, "I promise you." Holding Dami close again, he spoke with unwavering resolve. "Even if I have to fail 100 times, 1,000, 1,000,000 times, I will survive and save you. Just believe in me." Suddenly, Mio narrowed his eyes and shouted, "Do you hear me, my daughter?" Dami was stunned, completely confused. "Dad," she said softly. The scene shifted to the final attempt. Only one life remained. Miniac held his daughter in his arms. His eyes were empty. This was the 99th and last try. And at last they had found a perfect place to hide. This place, a joint military base, was protected by armed soldiers, and survivors were being cared for by the university hospital's medical team. Thanks to both strategic planning and pure luck, it had remained untouched by chaos. The children played happily alongside their parents. It was in every sense a perfect shelter. Mensuk had lived the rest of his life there. Now an old man in a wheelchair, he sat silently before his daughter's grave. 40 years had passed since he first arrived here. "My daughter, you've waited a long time, haven't you?" He gently laid down a bouquet of white flowers. "I had to be careful. This was my last chance." He stared at the flowers, his eyes calm but resolute. "But now I'm sure." His face was lined with wrinkles, his hair completely white. "This place is safe. If we can survive long enough to reach here, then this will be our final destination." Then, Monk slowly pulled out a handgun and raised it to his temple. "Wait for me, Dami. I'm coming to get you now." The sound of the gunshot echoed, and he was immediately thrown back into the past once again. And father and daughter stood fully geared, ready to face the world. Men let out a slow breath, then cast a serious glance at Damie. She looked back at him with quiet determination in her eyes. Suddenly, memories flooded his mind. He remembered what happened just before they reached the final shelter. Damie had died, and it had been his fault. Back in the present, he clenched his teeth. In his heart, he made a vow. He had spent 40 years reliving the same nightmare hundreds of times, all for this one moment to save her. With that thought, Mick stepped toward the door. His eyes were sharp. He was focused, ready. "This time, I can't make a single mistake." But then something happened that he never anticipated. Outside, an endless swarm of zombies was approaching. They were piled like mountains, swarming together and surging toward his house. This was the variable, the anomaly. Min stood frozen, his pupils contracting in disbelief. In 40 years, he had imagined thousands of scenarios, yet not once had he prepared for this. Flashes of previous loops came to him. In all 99 previous attempts, not once had a situation like this occurred. Now, the infected moved with terrifying speed, rushing at him like starving beasts. Their grotesque forms, their savage hunger, it was overwhelming. Mick couldn't move. He was completely stunned. It was something so obvious, so simple, that it had never even crossed his mind. While he remained paralyzed by shock, claws were already reaching out for him. He muttered to himself, almost as if blaming himself. There weren't supposed to be any zombies at the front door. Behind him, Damie screamed, "Dad!" Her voice snapped him back to reality. Suddenly, Mio turned and shoved her back into the house. The force of his push sent Damie sliding across the floor behind him. Min slowly began to close the door, his eyes fixed on his daughter one last time. Damie stood frozen, eyes wide, confused and startled as the door creaked shut between them. Only when it was nearly closed did it fully register. Her eyes flew open in horror. Bang! The door slammed shut. "Dad!" she screamed, banging on the door with her fists. She pounded it again and again, her voice desperate. "Open the door! Dad, hurry!" But no matter how she yelled, Mio held the door tight, refusing to let go, even as the horde of zombies swarmed him from behind. "Dad!" The infected had already begun tearing into his flesh, ripping through skin and muscle. His face twisted in agony, veins bulging along his forehead. But he didn't stop. He held firm behind the door. Damie sobbed uncontrollably. This was pain that cut deeper than anything, pain that a father had endured over and over again. Mintz had died 99 times before. He had long grown familiar with the agony of death. But still it tore through him anew. As blood poured, a memory surfaced, a much younger Damie, just a baby lying in her cradle. Mintz had stared at her then with pure happiness in his eyes. She was his reason to live. Back in the present, with death creeping over him, Min-Seok smiled gently and whispered to the door, "Don't cry anymore, my daughter." His strength began to fade. Memories flickered like dying embers. Maybe this is really the end. Will I die for good this time? Then suddenly his foot slammed down on the ground. "No, because of you, I can do anything." Like a man possessed, Minio roared as if drawing strength from another world. He lifted the entire swarm of zombies on his back like they were weightless. His jaw clenched and his eyes changed. Fire burned in them. "Even if I die 100, 1,000 times, it doesn't matter." The undead kept gnawing, but he didn't falter. "As long as you're alive," Minio threw his head back and screamed to the sky, "I can't die." And just like that, his body surged with power. His muscles bulged. His strength exploded. With both arms, he flung the zombies away like rag dolls. One bald zombie tried to rise again, snarling and opening its mouth. But Mensei, now almost otherworldly, zipped past it, decapitating it in a single swipe. One by one, he tore through them all. A blonde zombie lunged and sank its teeth into his shoulder, but it had messed with the wrong man. Mince snarled like a beast and bit the creature back, shredding its shoulder in return. At that moment, he no longer looked human, his eyes vacant, his skin blooded. He was fighting on instinct alone. He threw a punch, one clean strike to the abdomen of another monster. 3 more zombies flew into the air, screaming. A single punch to the neck was enough to send heads flying. Then another horde arrived, all eyes locked on one figure. Mintz stood there, muscles rippling, head bowed. His 6-pack abs and shredded arms were covered in gore. At his feet were piles of twitching, motionless corpses. He glanced over his shoulder. A glint of red light flashed in his eyes, pure killing intent. The zombies held in response. Inside the house, Dami had collapsed on the ground, exhausted from crying and pounding on the door. Tears stained her face. She could barely move. Then the door creaked open. A warm light spilled into the room. She looked up, and standing there was Min Sok, but not as she remembered him. He had returned with a completely different appearance. "Failure number 100, he said quietly, stepping into the light. "And I've been given another chance." His body was shredded with wounds, his eyes glowing red with something no longer human, but facing Dami. He still smiled. "Don't worry, Dami. Even if I'm no longer human, I'll protect you to the very end." His voice trembled with gentleness. Despite it all, his love hadn't changed. Bloodied, half-beast, barely alive, he knelt down and asked softly, "Are you okay, my daughter?" It was already the 7th day since the zombie outbreak began. Night had fallen over Mapo district in Seoul, casting a dark shroud across the entire city. In one dimly lit house, a soldier stood in confusion beneath a warm yellow light. "What the hell is this?" he muttered, baffled. Turned out Min-suk and Dami had made their way here. Instantly, the group of soldiers raised their guns toward the two of them. "Who the hell are you?" one barked, completely thrown off. "This whole place is crawling with zombies. What are you exactly? And how the hell are you still alive, let alone able to get all the way here?" A bald-headed soldier snarled, veins bulging across his forehead as he glared with bloodshot eyes. "What, you need a bullet in the skull before you'll open your damn mouth?" Suddenly, he froze mid-sentence. "Hey, what's wrong with your face?" Something flickered in his mind, a suspicion. Mick was wearing sunglasses, most likely to hide his blood-red eyes. But the bald soldier seemed to be thinking of something else entirely. "Wait, are you some kind of celebrity or something? Why the hell are you wearing shades?" he asked, more annoyed now. But Mick said nothing, remaining silent. The soldier's irritation grew. At that moment, someone stepped into view, a woman from Team Tahoe. Her codename was Black Widow, but she was better known as former Captain Shahayari. She stood tall, commanding, and with an icy tone she said flatly, "Get lost." Hayari began walking toward Minyo, her boots echoing against the floor. "There's no room left here," she said bluntly. "Find somewhere else." She leaned in closer, her expression hard and hostile. "Did you not hear me?" I said, "Get lost." Then she suddenly paused, her expression shifting into a mix of confusion and curiosity as she looked at him. At that moment, Minyo made his move, deliberately dramatic, like a scene out of a Hollywood film. He reached out his hand toward Dami. "My daughter's been wandering the streets for a week now," he said, his voice heavy with emotion. "Her asthma's flaring up again. Can't you see how much she's suffering? Please, I'm begging you, help me save my daughter." He shut his eyes tightly, pouring every ounce of grief and desperation into his performance. "If you won't help both of us, then at least take her. Just her, please. I'm begging you." Hearing that, Dan looked up at him in stunned disbelief. Hiri's facial muscles softened. She stared at him, lips pressed tight, then gritted her teeth hard enough to tremble. Even the bald soldier let out a mutter under his breath. "This bastard's out of his mind." Then he stepped forward too. Maybe he figured pulling some emotional stunt might sway their captain. "Oh, now we're pulling the sympathy card, huh?" he scoffed. "You think that's going to work on her?" But then, unexpectedly, it did. Hiri's eyes welled up. Tears streamed down her cheeks and even snot began to dribble. She quickly turned around and gave the order. "Let them in." Still, she kept her voice cold, her expression unreadable. "Don't get the wrong idea. I just need more people to protect this supermarket." Someone whispered, "Gently, wipe your nose first." Miniuk watched her walk away, her back turned. The bald soldier followed close behind, still babbling about something nonstop. He fell silent for a moment, then broke into a faint smile. "You really haven't changed, have you?" he said. "Captain Chahayari, leader of the surviving soldiers in Mapo district. a former officer who managed to defend the Amar, cold-blooded like a viper. Yet, strangely, whenever she's faced with the sacrifice of a parent, her resolve always seems to waver. Right at that moment, Dami suddenly burst out angrily. "Dad!" She looked thoroughly annoyed and began scolding him non-stop. "What was that back there?" "That was nothing like what we planned." He quickly tried to explain, "No, Dami, it's not what you think." Before he could finish, a nearby soldier yelled at them, "You two, come with me." Seeing that, Dami immediately slipped back into her role as an asthma patient. But the soldier, clearly exhausted, snapped, "Cut it out." Dami then clutched her head dramatically and groaned in pain, prompting a visible look of irritation from the man. "Quit messing around," he grumbled. Mio quickly pulled Dami into his arms. Looking down at her, his mind grew more troubled. Dami's condition is deteriorating faster than usual. She needs rest soon. If not, it could be dangerous. This situation was being affected by two variables: the incident from a week ago and his own strange, unpredictable body. Minsuk had been bitten by zombies and yet he survived. Not just survived, he was powerful enough to overpower them. A chilling thought flickered through his mind. My body's changed so much, it feels completely foreign. I'm not the man I used to be. Could it be I've already become a zombie? Scene change, a Mep Pop Jang branch. The most strategic location for survival during the early stages of the outbreak. Minsuk scanned the area fully stocked with essential supplies. The only place left with a functioning defense force. He glanced over to one corner. She'll be safe here, he thought, reassured as he watched Amy. But then something odd caught his attention. Why is the building next door completely collapsed? That's never happened before. The strange question made the soldier beside him raise an eyebrow. That's a weird way to talk. You from the future or something? Still, the man answered anyway. 3 days ago, a horde of zombies stormed the area. Captain Hyeri had fought fiercely, unloading her weapon non-stop into the swarm. Our captain led them away by herself to the next building over. She rappelled across toward a spot where 2 of our men were. Down below, the zombies were packed in tight like a hive gone mad. Then she triggered explosives we had planted in advance and flattened the entire building along with every last one of those bastards. He paused, then spat onto the ground with a dry cough. They're probably nothing but dried-out squid jerky by now. Maybe a few of those freaks managed to survive the blast, but even if they did, they'll just rot away trapped in there. As he spoke, the soldier suddenly noticed Minsuk tense, eyes locked forward, visibly on edge. That seemed to amuse him. "What's with that look?" he teased. "Don't tell me you actually think a zombie might crawl out to that mess." He was in the middle of mocking him, completely unaware of what was creeping up behind him. A real zombie. And not just any zombie, a giant one. As he slowly turned his head, his words caught in his throat and he froze. Towering behind him was a massive zombie, easily 10 times his size. And just like that, he was paralyzed in place. Before anyone could even panic, the creature had already raised its rotting arm into the air. It clenched its fist tightly, then slammed it down with terrifying speed, smashing into the ground with a thunderous crash. Dirt and rubble flew everywhere. Hearing the chaos, Hyeri came running toward the scene. The zombie's massive hand swung in her direction, but taking her down would not be that easy. Harry dodged swiftly to the side with practiced reflexes. The soldiers guarding the entrance instantly panicked. "Zombie! What the hell is that thing? Where did it come from?" By now, the creature had closed in on Manhwa and Dami. Hyeri immediately raised her voice and shouted, "Open fire! All units now!" Without hesitation, the team unloaded their weapons, bullets tearing through the air. But even after taking a barrage of gunfire, the bloated zombie stood its ground. It tilted its head back and let out a bone-rattling scream. Moments later, the grotesque giant had reached a group of soldiers. With one single sweep of its arm, it sent multiple troops flying, killing them on the spot. One lone soldier remained, frozen in terror. He collapsed to the ground, trembling as the monstrous corpse loomed over him, clearly not ready to let him go. The zombie crouched, preparing to leap, when suddenly a bag flew through the air. Hyeri appeared just in time. She lunged forward and yanked the young man out of harm's way. She slammed him to the ground and shouted in his face, "Get a grip! You trying to die?" "Yes, ma'am," he stammered, still shaking. But truthfully, Hyori was terrified too. It wasn't like she wasn't scared. "Focus, Chan Hyeri," she told herself. This situation was nothing like what had happened 3 days ago. Whatever this thing was, it wasn't a normal zombie. Her instincts screamed at her. She turned her head, eyes scanning the surroundings. And then she yelled, "Everyone, get inside the supermarket now!" And just like that, the 4 of them bolted toward the Amard at full speed. But suddenly, Mincy called out, "Wait!" Hyeri cut him off immediately. "Shut up and run." Glancing to his side, Miok saw his daughter in pain, struggling to breathe. In that instant, he stopped running. His brows furrowed deeply as he made a silent decision. Without another word, he spun around and sprinted toward the zombie. Gritting his teeth, he poured all his rage into a clenched fist. He slammed it against the perimeter fence surrounding the supermarket, trying to lure the monster toward him. Hyer's forehead was soaked in sweat as she shouted, "No matter what it is, it won't break through in one hit. While it's distracted, look for a weak spot." But then her footsteps faltered. Wait a second. Hy stood frozen in front of a group of survivors. Why are there still people on the first floor, from elderly folks to children? Everyone looked terrified, too scared to even move. The evacuation should have been completed by now, she thought, confused. Skidding to a stop, Hy cursed, "Damn it!" Then she turned around, face firm with resolve. "I'll draw its attention. You 3 get inside now." But as she looked up, she noticed something. Dami was standing alone. Hyeri shouted, "Why are you by yourself? Where's your father?" Her eyes widened. "Don't tell me your dad left you and ran off." She was just about to scold her further until Dami silently pointed to the side. Following her gaze, Hyeri froze, stunned into silence, and said nothing more. Hyeri followed the direction Dami was pointing. Her eyes landed on Minsk, who had clasped both hands together. Then, with a swift and brutal motion, he slammed them straight down onto the zombie head. Blood erupted in all directions like a gruesome fountain. The monstrous corpse was crushed in an instant, taken down with a single blow from Minyo's bare hands. His arms were now soaked in blood. But he wasn't done. He raised his fist again, ready for more. Everyone, soldiers, survivors, even Hyeri, stood frozen in place, eyes wide with disbelief. A nearby father instinctively covered his daughter's eyes with his hand, shielding her from the gruesome sight. The zombie let out a few final wretched screams before collapsing completely. Its limbs twitched briefly, then fell still. Minsk stood tall over its body, panting heavily. The creature's corpse was splayed beneath his feet. After pummeling the monster into a pulp, he was clearly exhausted. Hyeri quickly approached him, weapon drawn, still gripping her gun tightly. With everyone watching in stunned silence, Minyo finally spoke. "Sorry," he turned his gaze toward Dami. "I broke the promise I made to you," he said quietly. Then he let out a dry, bitter chuckle, eyes shifting to the side. "I was scared. I didn't want to see you get hurt, and that fear made me hesitate." Suddenly, Hyeri lifted her gun and aimed it directly at him. Her brows furrowed. There was alarm in her eyes, and her voice was sharp. "Who the hell are you?" But Muck didn't panic. He simply raised his hands slowly and adjusted his sunglasses with calm composure. "Ryu Minnick," he said, introducing himself. Across the way, Dami's expression turned anxious. "Don't." But Minyo kept going. "Father of Dami." Hearing that only made things worse for Hyeri. Her mind spiraled with confusion and unease. "No, please, Dad, don't reveal anything else. If you do, you'll be in danger." Just then, Mio looked her straight in the eyes, his gaze sharp and focused. "Zombie," he said. "I'm a zombie expert." The words hit like a thunderclap. Everything went silent. Damien and Hiri both echoed in disbelief. Expert? But Meanie continued without hesitation. After the outbreak, I spent every moment analyzing their behavior, their biology, their weaknesses, anything to survive. He smiled confidently with a relaxed tone as if nothing had just happened. I'm just glad I could be of help. I hope you'll all take care of me from now on. For a second, Hiri returned the smile, though it didn't quite reach her eyes. Oh, so that's how it is, she replied almost sweetly. Then, in a flash, she whipped out a knife and pressed the blade right to his throat. Hey, what are you doing? Dame cried out, rushing forward in panic. But Hiri didn't back down. Her voice was cold as ice. Holding the knife steady, she turned her eyes to the zombie's corpse, then back to Minio, the pieces in her mind starting to connect. A monster that bullets couldn't even scratch, yet you crushed it with your bare hands. She narrowed her eyes. And when exactly did your sunglasses fall off? Her voice dropped to a suspicious growl. Those red eyes, they're just like theirs. She leaned in close, eyes locked with his. Tell me the truth, are you even human? Mick finally spoke up. No, the bullets did work, he said calmly. Hiri looked even more confused. What? He continued explaining without hesitation. That monster was already weakened by the gunfire. I just delivered the finishing blow. Then Mio began demonstrating just how much of a true zombie expert he really was. That was a fused zombie, a creature formed by the merging of two zombies. Its destructive power is off the charts, but its main feature is its incredibly tough defense. He held up his index finger, cheerful as if giving a lecture, but it does have a weak spot, its chin. His eyes briefly shifted to the side, and inwardly he muttered to himself, "Of course, it takes force equivalent to a steel sledgehammer to actually make that weak spot count." That part he left unsaid. But Hiri still wasn't convinced. What about your eyes, then? Without missing a beat, Mio leaned in close and replied, I was born with a melanin deficiency. Where he came up with that excuse, nobody knew, but it sounded just plausible enough to shut down the question. Still, those eyes of his, there was something deeply unsettling about them. Minyuk then pointed at the knife she still had pressed against his throat. So, do I still look like a zombie to you? For a moment, Hiri found herself thrown off by his confidence. She gritted her teeth, eyes narrowing. Suspicious as hell, she muttered. There's definitely something off about you. Just then, Dami ran up and gently pulled Hiri back. Please stop. Hiri glanced at the girl and something shifted inside her. But what kind of zombie would protect his daughter? That thought echoed in her mind. Eventually, she lowered the blade and turned away. You're permitted, she said, stiffly. Back straight. Go inside. Though her tone was cool, she was clearly still unsure. As she walked off, she added without looking back, From now on, I'll be keeping an eye on you, Mr. Expert. She marched away, her face a mix of sorrow and frustration as she glanced toward the bodies of the fallen soldiers. Her eyes darkened with grief and rage. In the distance, two soldiers came running over, panting. Captain, are you all right? She didn't respond. Instead, she walked up to one of them and kicked his leg hard. The young man dropped to one knee, gripping his shin in pain. His expression remained stern and unrelenting. In an emergency, your first priority is to evacuate everyone to the basement parking level. Why the hell didn't you do that? The soldiers stammered, flustered, panicked. But she didn't let him finish. If that monster hadn't died just now, everyone in that supermarket would be dead by now. Her words were sharp and furious. Her face grew darker with each word. If I ever see this happen again, she leaned in, voice low and lethal, it won't be the zombies who kill you. It'll be me. The soldier immediately snapped to attention, hands clasped in front. Yes, ma'am. Please take a well-deserved rest. But Hiri didn't calm down. Still seething, she stormed off. The young man she had kicked clenched his jaw, teeth grinding with rage, as he glared at her departing figure with hatred in his eyes. Scene shift. Inside the plaza-level supermarket, everyone was laying out blankets across the floor. Thank goodness, Minyo murmured. He and Dame had made it here safely. As soon as he heard his daughter say that, he asked, "Thank goodness for what?" The girl looked at him cheerfully and smiled. "That you didn't get exposed." Dame sighed, exasperated. "You lie with such a straight face, you know that? I was so scared you'd get found out. I thought I was going to explode," she admitted, her voice a mix of worry and relief. "But you are totally calm. As long as you don't do anything too outrageous, I don't think they'll suspect anything. You're not the kind of guy who just waves a knife around." Then, all of a sudden, Dami asked, "Do you know that person?" "Him?" Mick recalled the last few encounters each time he seemed to run into Hyeri, but he couldn't tell Dami that, so he came up with something vague. "No, you can just tell by their face." Thankfully, Dami didn't press the issue and change the topic herself. "But seriously, do you even know what outrageous means? Where'd you learn a word like that?" "From my daughter, of course," he said with a proud smile. She frowned. "I never taught you that kind of stuff." Still smiling warmly, eyes filled with affection, Mick replied, "Yes, you did. The memory came back to me from another time I returned. And not just once, you taught me so many things." Damie blinked in confusion. "That many times, huh?" Suddenly, Minsuk stood up. "Stay right here, okay? I'll grab you something to eat." He stood behind her for a moment, just quietly watching her. Then he chuckled to himself, watching as Damie, clearly bored, absent-mindedly twirled a strand of her hair between her fingers. Not long ago, she had handed him a pair of sunglasses. "Promise me," she'd said, "seriously." Her face was stern, voice steady. "Whatever is going on with you, whatever weird stuff is happening, you can't let anyone find out." Damie had been deeply worried about her father. "If people know, they might hurt you." She frowned hard. "I just want you to be safe. You have to promise me, okay?" Now, Mick was already at the food distribution station. Damie had been right. After that, she'd gone off to chat with some people. But deep down, Minsuk knew if his identity got exposed here, if the truth came out, it would trigger a full-blown panic. He glanced around at the others, and the image was already clear in his mind. Chaos, screaming, fear. A little while later, he returned. "Damie, I'm back." But by then, the little girl had already drifted off to sleep from exhaustion. He didn't wake her. Instead, he gently laid a blanket over her small body. Suddenly, his face went pale. What the hell? The zombies were evolving faster than anything he'd ever seen. Their stage-to-stage progression was accelerating at a terrifying rate. More than 100 of them were now clustering at the front entrance. And it hadn't even been a week since the outbreak when mutated zombies started appearing. He sat down in shock, frozen in place. This speed, this development was unlike anything he'd experienced in any of his previous 99 lifetimes. And that very anomaly had turned the entire situation into a dangerous unknown. His mind raced with questions. Why are the zombies changing? His expression darkened. I have a feeling outside, the night still cloaked the city in silence and dread. And in some places, ruins had already started to form. Deep within a dense, shadowy forest, something grotesque suddenly emerged, a zombie unlike any other. Its tongue was absurdly long, stretching out a full meter, writhing like a whip. And the sight of it was nothing short of horrifying. But that wasn't all. It had far too many limbs, freakishly crawling and twisting as if it could sense I was near. And then, just moments later, more of them came, swarming in like a tidal wave. They weren't just hunting blindly. No, they were after me, and more terrifyingly, after my daughter too. I couldn't tell if it was because my existence unsettled them, or if it was something deeper, a kind of primal fear that made them want to eliminate me. One thing, however, was certain. One of the creatures had begun to twist and writhe in a way that was almost demonic. Suddenly, in the thick of that nightmare swarm, Minio appeared. From this moment on, even I had become a variable and unknown element to them. He walked forward slowly, unshaken. "So, this area's little gathering is complete, huh? Good." He slammed a metal rod hard into the ground. With him, he carried a small ladder, but his face carried a glint of killing intent. No need to waste time hunting the rest down. Staring at the zombies pouring in like hornets from a shattered nest, Minio raised his voice in a cold challenge. "What are you waiting for? Let's get this started." With that, he gripped the ladder tightly, and before his daughter could even wake, he snapped it clean in two. There was no hesitation. This needs to be finished. Now, suddenly, one of the multi-armed zombies lunged forward. The rest charged in right behind it. The first one never stood a chance. Minio greeted it with a brutal, lethal strike, slicing its head clean off. Without breaking stride, he flung the decapitated head straight back toward the oncoming horde. Armed with just 2 iron rods, he fought like a storm. Zombie after zombie fell before him. None survived his wrath. But then, one managed to sink its rotting teeth into his shoulder. With a savage yank, it tore Minnick's arm clean off. And yet he didn't panic. He planted his feet firmly into the earth, then leapt high into the air. Right before their eyes, his severed arm began to regenerate muscle, bone, skin, reforming in seconds. At that moment, he looked more like a demon than a man. Clenching his fist tight, his eyes lit up with a glowing hellish red. Then came the onslaught. Punch after punch, blow after blow, Mensek turned the battlefield into a slaughterhouse. Out of nowhere, more abominations slithered up from the forest floor. Elongated, ghoulish creatures that looked like serial killers twisted into zombie form. They circled around him, mouths stretched unnaturally wide, spewing out thick, violet slime. Suddenly, an explosion from the center of the swarm ripped through the ground. Rocks and soil scattered in every direction, and the monsters were thrown aside like rag dolls. From the smoke and dust, Mensek shot up into the air, wielding 2 metal rods, then crashed back down with the force of a meteor. As he landed, he struck them all down in a single sweeping motion. Then, as if out of nowhere, he pulled out 2 new weapons, sharper, deadlier. In a whirlwind of slashes, he tore through the monsters. Not a single one escaped unscathed. Each took at least 2-3 deep cuts. In no time, he had decimated the whole group. Now, all that remained was the many-limp beast, the one that had first emerged. It attacked first. 6 arms stretched toward him like serpents, claws open wide, aiming to tear him apart. But Minio was no easy prey. With a single thunderous stomp, he crushed the creature's skull underfoot. The monster shrieked in agony, mouth stretched open, releasing a piercing screech. "Oh, shut up already!" Minsuk snapped, annoyed, his ears ringing. He slashed forward and took its head clean off. With the final blow delivered and the entire horde wiped out, Mio's expression didn't change. Not even a flicker, only fury deep. Burning rage still lingered in his eyes. Before long, dawn had broken. Inside the supermarket shelter, most were still fast asleep. Their sleeping positions hadn't changed since yesterday. It was only now that the little girl began to stir. Dammy slowly opened her eyes, stretched, and greeted the morning with a quiet yawn. Her eyes wandered around the space, then stopped. Minsuk had returned at some point. He looked freshly showered, dressed in clean clothes, and was holding out a warm meal for her. "My little girl's finally awake." "Huh?" he said with a soft smile, placing the food down on the floor beside her. "Come on, eat up." Minsuk looked at his daughter, voice full of gentle affection. "You must be starving, right?" Dame blinked at him in mild surprise for a moment, then smiled back, radiating pure joy. "Yes." Outside the building, morning sunlight streamed through the air, warming the ruins with its golden glow. Meanwhile, inside a separate room, loud voices echoed out. "Are you kidding me right now?" Inside were Hayeri and one of her soldiers. The young man was reporting urgently. "I swear I'm not. I'm telling the truth." He sounded earnest, desperate. Even there was noise, loud noise between 1 and 5 a.m. yesterday morning. The captain heard it too, he added. According to his account and based on the scout team's reconnaissance this morning, all zombies in that area had been wiped out. Suddenly, Hayeri slammed the table hard, eyes blazing. "What the hell are you saying? You're telling me those things killed each other?" The soldier stammered, clearly unnerved. I know it sounds crazy, but I saw it happen with my own eyes." Hayeri narrowed her eyes and stared down at the map on the table. Every single zombie in that zone, gone. Eliminated within just 4 hours. "What the hell is going on?" she muttered. Then something caught her attention not far off in the data or a document. Her eyes lit up with sudden clarity. "Wait a minute, you're saying?" She began but quickly cut herself off and barked a command. "Gather everyone now." The soldier still looked confused but saluted and obeyed. "Yes, ma'am." Hayer's expression was tense, grim. "Even from this moment forward," she said coldly, "we initiate evacuation protocol. We're pulling out of a mart." Elsewhere, a man pressed his face against the window pane, eyes wide, and let out an Eric breath. "Huh, this is for real." Outside, the streets were completely empty. No zombies in sight. Just scattered belongings and the shells of abandoned houses. "Those bastards, they're all gone." Someone nearby turned around confused. "They've really disappeared." A woman craned her neck and called out. "I heard it too, clear as day." The usual background noise, the soldiers talking, the inhuman howls of the undead was gone, vanished without a trace. Everyone in the shelter lit up with joy. The zombies are really gone. We're safe now. We made it. Even Dami had heard the commotion. She turned to her father and said, "Dad, it looks like the zombies really are gone." But Masuk didn't answer. Instead, he quietly placed a helmet on her head. His expression turned deadly serious. "Dami," he said, voice low but firm, "listen to me carefully. No matter what happens, do not take off your helmet. Got it?" She blinked, confused. "What do you mean, no matter what happens?" Right then, Hayer's group approached. She raised a megaphone high into the air, facing the gathered survivors. Her voice rang out clearly across the shelter this morning. "Though we still don't know the cause, we've confirmed that all zombies in this area have been eliminated." The crowd erupted with cheers and relieved shouts. "Who? It's true, we're alive!" But Hayeri wasn't finished. Her face grew more solemn as she continued. "Therefore, we are initiating evacuation procedures. We will begin pulling out of a mart." The mood instantly shifted. "Evacuate? What? Did I hear that right? No way! Did she just say we're leaving? The zombies are gone. Why would we leave now?" But Hayeri remained composed. 3 days ago, just before we lost communication, we managed to make direct contact with another unit, the 2nd Armored Brigade. She paused to let it sink in. They're located in the Ganggi province. As far as we know, they're the only surviving military force in the region. They still have a full battalion's worth of armored vehicles, brigade-level manpower, and most importantly, the ability to take in civilians. The news only triggered more panic. "We're evacuating based on a single radio call? Yeah, how do we even know that call was legit?" But Hayeri didn't flinch. Her reply was calm, unwavering. "There's no need to worry about that. I know exactly who was on the other end of that call." She paused for just a moment, then added, "Codename Blue Hawk. If it's him, you can trust it without question." But despite her conviction, the crowd clearly wasn't buying it. "Trust my ass," someone muttered bitterly. "You're seriously asking us to leave based on some old broken signal? What, are we walking into safety or a death trap?" The tension grew thicker by the second as voices clashed back and forth. "We have to go. If the zombies come back, we won't survive another wave." "No way, I'm not going anywhere," someone shouted defiantly. "What if the zombies never come back? Then what?" Suddenly, another man threw his arms up and yelled in frustration. "See, I knew this was going to happen." He turned directly toward Hayeri, glaring. This is exactly what I expected, an emotional, reckless decision. Now, tell me, would a man in charge act like this? Huh? Am I wrong? His expression darkened instantly. She was seething. What did you just say? Right then, a calm but firm voice cut through the tension. Someone stepped forward, answering the challenge loud and clear. It was Minio. He walked toward them steadily, each step deliberate. "The zombies will come back," he said flatly. The young man spun toward him, scoffing. "And who the hell are you to say that, like you know anything? Huh? Answer me." Hayeri, spotting Mincy clearly now, muttered in disbelief. "The expert." Someone next to her repeated the word, confused. "Expert." Manuk's eyes locked onto the young man, his voice low and steady. "Staying here is no different than serving yourself up like meat on a platter." In that moment, he wasn't just a man anymore. He was something else entirely, a presence that made your skin crawl, like staring into the eyes of something that had already died and come back different. Is this what you call survival? The young man in the green cap visibly flinched. The look in Manuk's eyes chilled him to the core. That day, it felt like just sitting around, waiting to be devoured. Wordlessly, he backed off, slipping away, his daughter trailing behind, puzzled. "Dad, what's wrong?" she asked softly. But another man stepped up, standing in front of Minio. "Okay then, what? If we do go with the military, can you guarantee we'll survive?" Miniac answered without hesitation. "No, I can't guarantee that." Hearing that, the man barked out loudly. "See, all talk, no answers." But Minnick stared him down and calmly countered. "Then let me ask you something. You're saying you won't follow the military." He followed up with the real punch without the army. "Protecting you, do you really think you'll survive?" The entire crowd fell dead silent. The shouting, the arguing, all of it stopped in an instant. The air hung heavy as realization sank in. One by one, people started changing their tune. Now that I think about it, Captain Chai is right. Yeah, if it weren't for the soldiers, we'd be dead already. More voices joined, and let's go. They've kept us alive this long, there's no reason to doubt them now. The entire crowd began chanting, "Let's give them a chance. Trust the military. Trust Captain Shaw." Caught off guard, Hayeri stood frozen for a moment. In the blink of an eye, he had turned the tide of public opinion without even breaking a sweat. She glanced sideways at Miniac, her eyes narrowing in confusion. Just who is this guy? She wondered silently. Then suddenly he spoke up. "No need to thank me." She immediately snapped. "What? I never thanked you in the first place." That made him recall the times he had to convince others under even worse circumstances. "I'm used to this kind of thing." Still, Minio extended his hand toward her. "Besides," he added, smiling warmly, "I'm doing this for me and my daughter." His open palm reached toward Hayeri with quiet conviction. "Because I believe that if anyone can do it, it's you, Captain." Her body stiffened at those words. For a moment, she stood still. Then, in a flash, she returned to her usual commanding posture. "From this moment forward, we initiate the evacuation plan," she shouted into the loudspeaker. "This is Captain Shahayeri. I promise to get every single one of you out of here safely." Moments later, people began filing out of the building. Soldiers stood on alert, eyes scanning, weapons ready. Military trucks and buses rolled out in tight formation, one after another. Inside one of the vehicles, Dami looked irritated. Still wearing her helmet, she sat next to a stranger. Around them, soldiers kept watch, their eyes darting across the surroundings. In another vehicle, Hayeri stood up, watching through the windows. A distant whistle echoed through the night. A road sign emerged from the shadows ahead. The young driver chuckled and said, "Haven't crossed the Han River in a long time. Feels surreal." But Hayeri responded coldly, eyes on the road, her gaze fixed straight ahead. This is where things truly begin. Suddenly, someone beside her shouted, "Corporal Shin!" Right in front of them, a zombie appeared and then more, dozens more pouring in from the shadows. They charged in with ravenous, grotesque fury. Hayeri immediately called out over the radio, "Zombie spotted, commence combat procedures. Civilians and transport units stay to the right. Combat units move left." Vehicles split up and veered in different directions. It had begun. "First characteristic of zombies," Hayeri called out, "their hearing is more sensitive than their sight." Soldiers quickly tossed empty cans in one direction. The rushing zombies flinched, veering toward the noise. "It's working! They're following the sound!" Hyeri shouted her next command. "Maintain distance. Don't let them close in." But the young driver spoke up, anxious. "Captain, this doesn't look good." His voice shook. "Their numbers are increasing. At this rate, they'll catch up to us soon." Hyeri turned, eyes wide. "In that case, head for Hong'an Bridge." A few minutes later, the vehicle reached the bridge, but the center section had already collapsed. Hyeri shouted again. Second characteristic of zombies. So long as they sense human presence, no matter the conditions, they'll charge in without hesitation. Just then, the vehicle came to a screeching halt. Zombies were still veering off to the side, distracted by the noise of the cans. One of them suddenly turned its head toward the group, but it was already too late. A barrage of bullets rained down. Skulls shattered, bodies crumpled. Zombies kept pouring in from behind, funneling toward the same spot. Third characteristic of zombies, someone said, as a hideous creature turned its bulging eyes toward them. Their weak spot is the back. That's when Minsuk came roaring and driving a steamroller. With a thunderous crash, he slammed into the zombie from behind. His face was a mask of fury and hatred. "Steamroller incoming!" A steamroller capable of crushing anything under tens of tons of pressure, the crown jewel of all heavy machinery, and now Minsuk was using it to obliterate the horde of zombies. Suddenly, two zombies fused into one grotesque mass, trembling violently. It had 4 eyes and let out a piercing shriek. But no matter what kind of monster it was, once it rolled under that steamroller drum, it was done for. The rest of the zombies began to sense danger. They turned their heads too late. Hyer's team, watching the scene unfold, was left completely frozen in place. Wherever Mi drove, the ground was littered with mangled corpses. Inside the cab, he clenched his jaw tight, eyes locked forward, fully focused on driving. Cut to the civilian transport vehicle. In one seat, Daisy sat beside an elderly woman. She held her backpack tightly, her gaze cast downward, a heavy look in her eyes. "What is this?" she thought. She recalled the moment not long ago when she had confronted her father. "Why do you have to be the one to do this?" Mac had gently replied, "Because no one else can. I'll be right there moving with the soldiers. Don't worry." But Dammy still couldn't shake her anxiety. "But what if they find out who you are?" Just then, a voice rang out. "Captain Chi's unit has returned." Dammy remembered something else her father had said. "It's just a support role. That's all I'm doing, sweetie, nothing more." And now, watching from the window, she saw him driving that massive steamroller through a wall of undead. "Dad, you'll never let yourself be exposed, right?" The sight before her stunned her into silence. Suddenly, Dammy screamed, "Everyone move back!" "Why, yes, ma'am." A few zombies were still chasing them, but they didn't make it far. One by one, they were flattened beneath Minsuk's unstoppable machine. A soldier riding up top cheered, took them all out in one shot. Soon, the sun began to dip. The convoy of vehicles kept moving steadily, one after another. A young soldier peeking out from the roof of the steamroller broke into a wide grin and called out, "Captain Shaw, we did it!" 6:45 p.m. The entire 2nd Mechanized Infantry Brigade has arrived. It was one of the critical strongholds on the path to Dijon. If they were to press forward, this was a checkpoint they had to reach. Minio grinned from behind the wheel. Only 8 days to get here. That's a new record. But then his smile faded, his brows furrowed. We can't get cocky. If he let the power go to his head, if he made even one careless move, the image of Damien in danger flashed through his mind. She could get hurt. I won't stray from the roots I confirmed in my past life. This is only the beginning. The young soldier looked down from the roof and shouted in admiration. "That was insane! You're a damn expert. To be honest, I didn't want to team up with you at first, thought you were a bit much, but if it weren't for you, none of us would still be alive." Another person stepped down from a vehicle and eyed men curiously. "We only found that machine. We never thought anyone would dare drive it. What did you used to do before all this?" "Manual labor." Muck responded with a light laugh. "Nah, I just learned how, that's all. In this world, knowing more is a survival advantage." With that, Hyeri and Mick also stepped out of the vehicle. "I'm just glad everyone made it here safely," Hyeri said, as she cracked her joints and surprisingly thanked him. Hearing that, Mick puffed up a bit, following behind her with a smug grin. "Wait, what was that? That last part, could you repeat it?" Annoyed by his teasing, Hyeri whipped around and barked, "You're so noisy!" Up ahead, waiting for them, was Sergeant Lee, and he, commander of the 1st Company of the 2nd Mechanized Infantry Brigade, standing beside another soldier. He smiled warmly and greeted her. "Captain Shah, Hyeri, we've been expecting you." That caught her off guard. "You know who I am?" she asked, and he quickly explained. "Yes, Mom. We were informed that with your abilities, you'd definitely make it here by today." That's what Colonel Cha said. Her expression shifted the moment she heard that name. "Colonel Cha," she repeated under her breath. And he chuckled and added, "Yes," he said, and, I quote, "a loud-mouthed, stubborn female officer will show up here soon." Harry's face darkened instantly. Like a tiger about to pounce, she snapped, "Where is the colonel?" Meanwhile, Minio tried to calm Dami, who looked visibly tense from all the shouting in. He continued calmly, "He's at the rear gate, Mom. There's been a zombie appearance over there." At that, Harry flinched, her eyes wide with concern and confusion. She shouted, "The colonel went personally. He led the troops himself." He laughed a little and shook his head. "No, Ma." Harry breathed a sigh of relief. "Good. He's not exactly young anymore." But he raised an eyebrow and muttered with a slight smirk, "Is that so?" He glanced off toward a certain direction, hesitating slightly. There a towering figure stood, powerful, broad-shouldered, and still radiating dominance. The colonel handled it personally. Cut to the rear gate of the brigade. 2 soldiers stood watch, scanning the perimeter. One of them glanced at his watch and said, 35 minutes and 27 seconds. Then he called out, "Sir, that's a new record." The man they were addressing, Colonel Cha, chuckled in response, a low, amused rumble. Blades really are better than guns. The zombie he just annihilated lay sprawled out on the ground, unrecognizable. Colonel Cha grinned, baring his teeth in satisfaction. This was the former commander of the Special Warfare Command, now serving as the brigade commander of the 2nd Mechanized Infantry Brigade. Colonel Cha Yongo stared down at the zombie's crushed skull with a look of pure satisfaction. "Now that's what I call satisfying. Nothing beats chopping him up with your own hands." 2 young soldiers nearby looked pale with worry. "Even so, sir, please, next time, use a gun. We're right here with you. What if you got bitten?" Pungo just burst out laughing louder than before. "Me? Chapungo bitten by these pathetic corpses? Don't make me laugh." He leaned in close to the zombie's lifeless face. "Someone like me can tell with just one glance." His eyes didn't leave the mangled remains. So what's the combat capability of this one?" Then he turned toward the young soldiers and barked, "With your sorry excuse for fighting skills, how the hell were you going to help anyway? All you do is get in my damn way." The 2 soldiers exchanged a helpless glance. "Harsh, sir, that's harsh." "Yeah, but he's not wrong. Can't argue with that." Pungo winced and rubbed his shoulder. "Ugh, my back's killing me. Whoever said old age spares no one was damn right." His eyes darted to the side. Is there seriously no one worth a damn out there besides this pack of useless brats? And yes, those same useless brats definitely heard that. Just then, a huge zombie slowly began to rise behind him. Pungo turned around, eyebrow raised in mild curiosity, but not even the slightest trace of fear. He looked it dead in the eye and said calmly, "Huh? You still alive?" The creature let out a guttural growl and lunged straight at him, only to be flattened mid-air by Minyuk Steamroller, which came crashing in out of nowhere. The 2 young soldiers jumped back in shock. What the hell was that? Pungo narrowed his eyes, weapon now gripped tightly in his hand. He stared straight ahead. "Someone like me, I only need a single glance. But this time, even he was caught off guard. His eyes widened from the dust and steam. Minhyuk stepped forward slowly. The killing intent radiating off him was thick and suffocating. "So, what's the combat level of this one?" Pungo muttered. Minhyuk spoke up, his tone calm but confident. "Nice to meet you all. I came here with Captain Chahayari. My name is Ryu Minhyuk. I heard the situation and came to see if I could help, but before he could finish, Pongo raised Priest his weapon and brought it down, aiming straight for Miniac's head. Minio moved instantly. He dodged. The soldiers nearby cried out in shock. "Colonel, what the hell? Did you just attack a civilian?" One of them choked mid-sentence as he stared. "No way! What is this?" Mick was holding the blade with one hand, looked down from above and shouted, "Just holding it?" "Colonel!" But Pungo wasn't backing down. His fury burned hot. "Everyone fall back. Sound the red alert now." He stared into Miniac's eyes glowing blood red. And in a voice laced with dread, he declared, "This guy is a monster." Minnick let out a quiet sigh. "Can't fool those eyes of yours, huh?" Then he called out loud and clear. Pungo froze in disbelief. "What?" In the same moment, Minsk twisted his wrist and shattered Pungo's blade with raw force. The broken shards scattered through the air. Pungo's hand, still clutching the weapon, hung suspended in place. Minsuk bowed his head slightly. "I have to stay here, and to do that, I need to earn your approval." But words alone were no longer enough. Pungo stared at him, stunned, unable to believe what he was seeing. Mick raised both fists. He shifted into a combat stance, ready for what was to come. "Then, let me show you who I really am, in the language you understand. Best demon combat rules."